In December, Santa Cruz City Council approved a federal grant request proposed by the SCPD for $220,000 from the Department of Homeland Security towards the purchasing of a Lenco BearCat. The money from the grant, in addition to annual $30,000 allotment the department receives from the DHS, provided the city with enough outside revenue to purchase the BearCat for $251,000 without directly charging the city. According to Lenco's official website, the BearCat was developed to deal with dangerous situations that local law enforcement might not be equipped to handle. Certain variants with built-in weapons programs such as gun ports, tear gas deployment nozzles, or battering ram attachments are in use by the military, but the version ordered in Santa Cruz has no weapon components and will not be used for offensive measures. According to Lieutenant Escalante, the official within the Santa Cruz Police Department who filed the grant proposal, says the BearCat will be used to escort emergency service units, whether they be tactical or medical teams, to certain locations where simple police equipment might not be enough to secure the safety of the responding units. The BearCat would allow medical services to deploy to locations too dangerous for local paramedics and secure medical attention for those who might have otherwise been left waiting. Lieutenant Escalante's decision to apply for the grant was spurred by the fatal shootings of 2 department detectives in February of 2013. The 2 were responding to a call on North Branciforte Street when the caller started shooting from inside his house. The department hopes that by having the BearCat, they'll be putting their officers at less a risk when responding to dangerous situations. According to Lieutenant Escalante, the BearCat is not going to be used for routine responses.
But I think once we get the vehicle, people will eventually see that they will rarely see it. It won't be just used as a standard patrol vehicle. It will only be utilized when the threats present themselves in order for us to justify the use of it and protect the community and the first responders.
Even with that said, the acquisition of the BearCat by the Santa Cruz Police Department does come at a time when local law enforcement agencies across the country have been acquiring offense-oriented military equipment, such as the Humvee or MRAP, and public fear or dissatisfaction is understandable. Many protesters and the sole dissenting council member, Micah Posner, have argued that receiving the equipment so soon after the events in Ferguson, Missouri, seems to be a step in the wrong direction. While the measure might have recently come to the attention of the public, Lieutenant Escalante first submitted the grant proposal for approval in fall of 2013, before the public discourse was wrapped up in events like Ferguson, Missouri, or police hostility in other cities. The proposal took time to clear certain bureaucratic requirements and to be accepted by the different regional boards before the measure could be passed on to City Council for final approval. Out of the 7-person council, only Micah Posner voted against the city request for the armored personnel carrier. When asked about his decision to vote against the program, Posner said there was a lack of time to become informed and discuss the specifics of the equipment with the council and the public. According to Posner, the agenda report for the city council meeting did not specify that the city was hoping to purchase a BearCat and only specified that it was hoping to request an armored rescued vehicle. Santa Cruz residents have expressed anger and disappointment towards the council's decision, and numerous protesters have attempted to disrupt the council's actions at different city meetings. Public sentiment here is mirrored across the country, as perceived local militarization brings a degree of dissociation between communities and police departments. Some protesters feel the city tried to sneak the item to them through the approval process by placing it on the consent agenda, something Councilman Posner said is typically used for non-controversial decisions. By being on the consent agenda, the item was not relayed to the public in advance, reducing the amount of time to deliberate with members of the community, prompting some of the feelings of betrayal expressed by protesters. Noah Mishka, a protester who was present at the City Council meeting on December 9th when they made the decision to approve the BearCat, called the equipment a shocking piece of heavy machinery and compared to something out of one would see a Terminator movie. Mishka continued to say that the BearCat represents a step in the direction that the police have been taking for years, towards increased offensive capabilities, stating that the police have always depended on every overwhelming force to control and intimidate crowds. That's part of their job. Santa Cruz Mayor Don Lane has acknowledged that the divide between the community and the police has grown and told us that he hopes to work towards bridging the divide.
I think my feeling is that what's happened is that the vehicle has become kind of a symbol of something people are concerned about, and probably the use of the vehicle in this community would not in and of itself be something that I think would be a problem. And yet people are properly saying we want to have closer ties between the police department. We don't want to be afraid of the police department, and that this has kind of represents like our concern about that. So I'm kind of hoping that we can kind of take, I know some people don't agree with this, but I'd kind of like to set the vehicle over here aside and say, let's talk about those issues directly. Like, how can we build the stronger relationships and communication between parts of the community that don't feel like they have that good a relationship now?
The police department is aware of the dissatisfaction from the community and hopes to be able to remove the frightening image associated with the BearCat and re-strengthen their connection to city residents. According to Lieutenant Escalante, the police department will hold public showings of the BearCat, allowing individuals to climb in and observe the machinery for themselves. Similar to how the police department brings squad cars to elementary schools, Lieutenant Escalante hopes by bringing the BearCat to schools, it'll show children and families that the negative feelings towards the equipment should ease away, and the public will become more comfortable with the police department once again. Congress first approved transferring excess military equipment to local police departments in 1990 to better equip police against the war on drugs, but since then, the specific congressional authorization has slightly changed to include anti-terrorist capabilities, but the program remains essentially the same. According to this study performed by the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, roughly $4.3 billion worth of equipment has been transferred to more than 8,000 police departments for local use across the country. In 2013 alone, nearly $500 million worth of equipment was transferred to local departments, increasing the militarized appearance of police throughout the country. Not all of the military transfers thus far have been BearCats. Many cities request more offense-oriented vehicles, such as Humvees or MRAPs, or different types of military-grade weaponry, like assault rifles or shotguns, and ammunition is even commonly transferred for local use. The BearCat is not an offensive vehicle, and official classification is a personnel carrier, meaning it would take individuals to certain locations instead of being an offensive ace in the hole for the Santa Cruz Police. According to Fusion Reporting, 184 police departments have been suspended from the so-called 1033 program for failing to comply with set guidelines or losing the acquired equipment. There are examples of different caliber rifles being stolen and even 2 instances of Humvees being taken from a local department. With this known, it becomes even more understandable why the public is against bringing in equipment as sophisticated as the BearCat into their communities. The community does not want the equipment used against them, and if security at different departments is an issue and advanced equipment is falling into the hands of potentially dangerous individuals, the public has the right to feel afraid. With more guns in the street, the potential for gang violence and black market distribution increases, making police feel once again that they will have to upgrade their equipment in order to stay ahead of the public.
I think it's kind of a continual, situation where you're trying to keep up and improve your tactics and learn from casualties and fatalities that have occurred in law enforcement. I really don't see any change, not in the near future, where people are going to have less access to ammunition and assault rifles and fully automatic type of rifles. I don't see the slowdown in that. For now, we need to better train our people and better equip our people to be able to deal with it.
The hard question to ask is this: what should the government do with all this excess equipment? They've already authorized the production of too much equipment, and dozens of military vehicles have been deserted in Iraq or Afghanistan because the government doesn't want to pay the shipping costs to bring them home. Additionally, the U.S. is the largest arms exporter in the world, selling around $220 billion worth of equipment between 2004 and 2011, according to a Congressional Research Service report. Is it better to have military equipment sitting around or in use abroad than allowing it to be used locally? It becomes easier to ignore consequences when they're out of sight, and the effects American weapons are having on other countries is certainly out of sight and out of mind. The anger expressed by different communities is understandable because they can see the effects of police militarization so close to their homes. It's no longer a foreign concept. With that being said, the government's stance on excess military equipment is what the public should be protesting. Without the decisions to continually spend on defense projects excess weaponry would not be available for local use in the first place. The desire for a strong national defense is understandable, but what the U.S. has done by allocating such a large degree of the budget to defense projects is publicly unjustifiable. There is no reason to be producing to the extent where we can supply armored vehicles to every department that requests one, or to any country that wants to buy one. While the BearCat might not be directly costing anyone in Santa Cruz, the larger program of defense spending is costing everyone in the country, and people protest where they feel they can make a difference. We spoke to Professor Daniel Wuerls, an expert on American military policy, about the issue.
If you see the society as a whole getting more militarized and doing things you don't like, and you know, with the wind and so forth, like the response to the protests in Ferguson, Missouri, and so forth, then this is where you have to protest, right? So even though you may not be 100% against Santa Cruz doing something like this, just the idea that this is going on across the country in this way, this is where you do it, right? Because this is where you live. So I totally sympathize with that, not just in this case, but in other cases where maybe the target isn't exactly the right target, or it's not, it's not an M-ramp, it's not a tank, but it represents this larger problem of giving away or subsidizing this, what could be seen as, excessively militarized equipment for law enforcement, which still, by and large, rarely needs that kind of thing. Right?
The government's decision to spend heavily on defense projects takes away from funds that can be used more beneficially in other sectors of society. The Santa Cruz public has a right to be mad and is justified in their fear of a militarized future based on the actions of the federal government. But it's a tricky situation because the SCPD has a right to keep their members safe when doing their duty, and is justified in their desire to stay ahead of the curve technologically to ensure their safety. The protesters are also right. We live in a time of increased militarization, and seeing that effect in your own community can be scary. But it's also scary if your community does not receive the equipment. SCPD members risk their lives every day to protect the city and its residents, and should feel protected when doing their jobs. What the public should be discussing is why the federal government believes it needs to be spending so much on defense in the first place, and how that lends itself to a militarization of other areas in society. That's all we have for you this edition. We'll see you next week on BSN.